Hey, everybody. I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Frenemies. We're going to take time today to go over a really interesting team in the Rays. Me and DJ have had a lot of conversations today about them. So, DJ, we'll just kick it off here real quick. Tell us about the 2019 Tampa Bay Rays.
So what an unbelievable season the Rays had, and we were talking about this a little bit. For them to go 96-66 last year was definitely very impressive to me. And if it wasn't for the Yankees, this team would have easily won a division. But obviously the Yankees were really good last year. You know, they beat the A's in the one-game wild card and lost, unfortunately, 3-2 to the Trastros last year and were knocked out of the playoffs. So these guys were really close. I just the average baseball fan, I would dare them to name 5 guys from that team last year, and they'd have a hard time. And you wouldn't be alone. And with a bunch of no-name guys, these guys took it over. I wouldn't say necessarily no-name guys, but not a ton of star power on this team by all means. And I think Kevin Cash did an outstanding job. I think we'll talk a lot about him in this episode of what he's done for this Rays team in the past few years. But, in 2018, this team was 90-72. And then, last year, 96-66. And it's no fluke. It's no joke when you win over 90 games 2 years in a row. So they're doing something right. And, for them to do that was pretty good, pretty awesome. And one of the things that kind of got overlooked a little bit was, they traded Chris Archer a few years back. And a couple guys that they got in that trade are a big reason why they had a lot of success last year, and that's Austin Meadows and Tyler Glasnow. So that ended up working out really well for them. At the time, Archer was a stud. Why are they getting rid of him? But, man, they got 2 of these guys that are core to this team, and Meadows was an all-star last year. Great player for them, and solid rotation that they had last year. I think they really, really shined and had a great year. And so there's a lot to look forward to in 2020, building off that outstanding 2019 team they had last year.
Yep. So Kevin Cash, man, I totally agree with you. He's straight up a wizard. He has mystical powers or something. I really can't explain what he's done. They do some weird things. They were one of the first ones to use an opener. He's definitely a sabermetrics type of guy. He plays guys that you would think shouldn't be playing on certain days, and those guys get clutch hits. And so, just amazing. And, yeah, what a fleece job they did on the Pirates, man, with that trade. Chris Archer, I'm sure the Pirates would love to release him if they could just get rid of the money somehow, some way. And for them to get 2 potential all-stars out of that, wow. Just amazing. And as usual, their farm system is loaded. And usually that was a result of first-round picks in the upper levels because their team was no good. Well, they've been good for several years now. So they've done a good job acquiring talent when need be. So like you said, it's going to be really interesting going into the season to see. There's all these pundits predicting them. I pulled up ESPN today, and it was crazy to me. They were talking about the people that benefited the most from the 60-game season, and they predict the Rays to win it all. Now, as a Yankee fan, I'm looking at that with the stink eye big time. I don't understand that. The Yankees are loaded. But, I guess it's a culmination of what you're talking about. 90 wins, then 96 wins. And so the next step, should be a World Series run. So let's talk about this team's a little bit. Let's start off with the key losses. I don't have that list in front of me. But I'm sure you've researched it out a little bit. Who is their key loss?
So, yeah, when I went over their losses, I saw Tommy Pham went to the Padres, Avisail Garcia to the Brewers, and Travis d'Arnaud to the Braves. Those are 3 guys I think that they lost that were major. We talked last week with Shelton about Travis d'Arnaud. I'm not a fan. I know he can hit. Terrible defensively. So I wasn't really thinking too much that the Rays would miss him from the standpoint of the catcher position. So, to be honest with you, I'm going to go Tommy Pham on that. Tommy Pham's a pretty solid player. Doesn't get a lot of credit. He's over in the Padres now. But I'm going to say that he is the guy that no doubt they're going to miss the most. Garcia, they'll miss as well. those guys were both pretty solid for them in the outfield. But I'm going to go with Tommy Pham as their biggest loss. So, yeah, I mean, Tommy Pham is the guy for me. I think that they'll miss him the most out of those guys.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with d'Arnaud. And the reason why, I know he's terrible defensively, but they're going to miss his bat. The drop-off at catcher for them is major. Now, I know Zunino a couple years back, he had 20 or 30 homers, but last year he hit 165. I looked at their backup catcher. He's not too inspiring either. And so I think having d'Arnaud out of that lineup is really going to be detrimental. And again, they got two other top offensive guys to replace in addition to him. And so I just think losing the offense that he provided is really going to hurt. So with all that in mind, who do you think the biggest addition was?
So, man, these guys definitely loaded up on some players here. They lost those guys, but they replaced them. Hunter Renfroe came over from the Padres. Jose Martinez comes over from the Cardinals. Yoshitomo is a signing that they had from the Japanese League. So these guys added a few bats in this lineup. Hunter Renfroe had 26, 26, and 37 home runs the last 3 years with the Padres. He had 58, 68, and 64 ribbies. I don't like his batting average at all. He's about a 235 career hitter, which is not good. 294 on base, which I'd like to see better. But he's 27. He's got potential to do a lot of damage in this lineup with all the home runs that he hits. I like the guy. I think he's really good. I think if you're going to lose Pham and Garcia to replace him with Renfroe, kind of just adds right back into what they lost. Martinez, in his only full season with the Cardinals, he was 17 bomb and 83 ribby guy with a 367 on base and 305 batting average. And he's a career 363 on base guy. So that guy rakes. He doesn't really have a baseball body. He's long and skinny. He reminds me a lot of Hunter Pence and his body type, and just gangly and a weird stance and not really baseball body, but he gets a lot out of it. And then, the guy we don't know nothing too much about is the Yoshitomo guy, and he hit 255 bombs in Japan, 240 homer seasons and 111 ribbies 5 times. So this guy can mash, and I know it's a Japanese league, and I never like comparing the Japanese league to MLB. I don't think it's even close. But if you're in a professional league and you're hitting bombs like that, you got to be somewhat legit. So they've had a lot of hitting to this lineup, which is kind of scary when you think about it. So to say who the guy I think may help them most, I'm gonna go with the Renfroe, I think. But if this guy from Japan comes over and mashes for him, then he could be a steal.
Yeah, so I agree with you. And I'm going with the guy from Japan. And the reason why is just to be honest with you, I can't deal with low batting average. It's just not my thing. I know that, he hits a lot of bombs. On base percentage really wasn't that great either. I am a big Jose Martinez fan. That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Now you got a DH. So is he just going to split time with Choi? Is it just going to be a platoon? Or are they going to try to find more bats for him? He potentially is a high average guy, but I'm going with, say his name again, DJ, the dude from Japan.
Yoshitomo.
I couldn't have figured that out. Good job. But, as a Yankee fan, I bring that up all the time. One of the greatest signings, and I was totally against it at the time, that the Yankees ever had was Hideki Matsui, man. He just came over, just a great professional hitter. And I'm not saying this guy's going to be Matsui, but if he was, it's going to make that lineup pretty dangerous. All right, so let's talk about the biggest strength for the Rays. What's the biggest strength?
Well, I think it's the rotation. There's no doubt about it. For me, I was looking at this today. These guys are loaded in potential. Not only potential, but what they've already done. When you got Blake Snell leading the rotation with a 21-5, Cy Young Award 2018 guy. However, he was 6-8 last year with a 4.29, and this team won 96 games. So their ace had an awful year, and they still produced, which is another thing that made me do this today, trying to figure this team out, because he wasn't there. And, he's yapping a lot about this collective bargaining stuff, which I don't want to get into too much. But if you don't want to play, then don't play, and somebody else will. And if he pitches like he did in 19, they don't even need him. That was terrible. So I was really disappointed in him last year. But he does have potential to dominate. He's proven that. He's a lefty. He's a top of the rotation guy. If he can come back and be that guy they need him to be and shut his mouth, then he can be legit, And I just think that they've got a ton of depth with that rotation. You got Tyler Glass now. We talked about him to begin the show. They stole from the Pirates. Charlie Morton is just so consistent. What a great pitcher for the Astros, and 13-8 last year for the Rays. Yanni Chirinos, which he's all right, and then Ryan Yarbrough rounds out the rotation. And these guys are dogs, man. They get after it. And we talked a little bit about this with Shelton. Is these guys get 12 starts this year, they're gonna let it fly, man. And these guys are no doubt the strengths of this team. And I wanted to mention too, Brendan McKay is another guy that didn't see too much of him last year. He's still really young. He's one of those guys that goes both ways. He can hit for you, and he can pitch, which is unbelievable to me that we got guys like that in the league now. So if he comes up and steals a spot at the end of this rotation, this is a guy that there's a high ceiling for, and he could do it. He could be the guy that jumps into this rotation. So another guy that, totally just adds to the strength, I think, of this pitching rotation.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's where I was going to go as well. It's the rotation. If you look at their lineup, it's just hard to figure out, how they did anything. And it was their pitching that carried them. I love Charlie Morton. I think he is a gamer. If I want a guy to win a game, it's in that rotation right now, I'm going straight to Morton. I'm like you. I love Brendan McKay. I definitely had him on my fantasy team for a minute last year. And I love guys that are athletes, man. And obviously he is. If you can hit major league pitching like he can and then strike out more than a batter per inning, that's a big deal. And I think it kind of creates a little bit of a problem, to be honest with you. I think it may take his eye off the ball. We haven't seen anybody be really successful at that. It's usually kind of one or the other. Ohtani would be the exception to that. Of course, we haven't got to see that much because of the Tommy John and everything. But, the Rays got a really interesting rotation. Glasnow looked great last year. I am not an Ian Snell fan for multiple reasons, and we probably don't need to get into all that. But if he did come back and be an ace, you basically got, in my opinion, 3 aces, because I think Charlie Morton's one too. And they're very deep, and obviously got several prospects that can help along the way too, which makes a perfect transition to my next question. Who do you think can help from the farm system?
I'll tell you what, man. Wander Franco. This guy is the number one prospect in baseball. Not just the Rays, baseball. I would love to see them pull him up this year. Now, whether or not that's going to happen, I highly doubt it. He's probably not quite ready yet. But, man, if he gets an opportunity with the roster so expanded this year, this guy's it, man. He's the real deal. I watched a lot of video on this guy. If you were to build a hitter from scratch, that's what it would look like. This guy swings from both sides of the plate. He takes a monster full hack. The bat hits his back. What a beautiful swing. I saw him hit the ball up the middle against the pitcher and almost took his legs out. Just destroyed him, put him right on his butt. This guy's legit, real deal. He's 19. He's a shortstop. He's 5'10", 189. He's on the fast track. With how young he is, there's some guys saying he could come up this year. If not this year, he's definitely up next year. And he can rake, man. The scouts give a 20 to 80 grade when you see the draft. You watch it every year. You see 20 to 80 grades on everybody. And for the first time in my life, I kid you not, his hitting was rated as an 80, which is the top,
Mm.
which is unbelievable to me that they actually agree that this guy's all the way at the top. And all the video I've seen, I believe it, man. Left-handed stick, right-handed stick, both swings are great. I just think that, he was the Rays minor league player of the year last year. It was his first year. I think the sky's the limit for him. He hit 336 in the minors last year. Just a lot of good things about Wander Franco. And when I saw he was the number one prospect in baseball, I had to take a good look at him. And boy, he's a real deal.
Yeah, man, I have to agree with you there too. And I have to believe he's going to be up this year. If the Rays got a couple or one weak position, it's at shortstop. Adames is, he's good. He's just not great. Below average hitter. And I really think, man, looking at this lineup, the Rays are going to need something. Whether that's a trade, whether that's bringing somebody up. I'm not personally a believer in the Rays lineup at all. When you stack it up against the top offenses in the league, it's just not even close. And I don't think their pitching is far enough ahead that it can make up for that lineup. Now, anything can happen in a short season. Anything can happen in a short series. But for them to win it all, they are going to have a guy like Franco come up and make some noise. And another guy that I was going to mention, I just wrote this down, and this is looking way in advance, but what do most playoff teams have that win? They usually have a guy that's noisy on the bases. Some guy, it's been Dave Roberts. It's been Eric Young before. Well, the Rays have the top base stealer in the minors in their system. He's in AAA, scored 115 runs last year, one of the best runners there is. And so I could see them bringing him up at some point to be that noisy guy on the bases, the guy that steals that base when you need it. So I'd keep an eye out for him. And then McKay, like we've already talked about, I'm a huge fan of his as well. The Rays system is loaded, just like it always is. Now they just have some players to put around them.
Here's the one thing I want to add about that, David, real quick. You mentioned the speed that he's got. So why would you not bring a guy up like that? Especially think about this one. When we got a new rule this year where the 10th inning, you start with a guy on second base. Okay, yeah. Now if that's me, it's your last out that goes out to second. Well, I'm subbing that guy in. If I got a guy zooming like that and I want to bunt him over and get him in, or he's going to score on a hit, then what a weapon to have coming off the bench to just run in extra innings, And that's not going to be a playoff thing, but, you can win some ball games in the regular season by having a guy like that. You go into extra innings, or if you get late in the game and you need a stolen base, man, that makes a difference. So good point on that, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about the strengths a little bit. What do you think is a weakness for the Rays?
So, I totally 100%. You stole it from me already. Travis d'Arnaud, like I was saying, I just am not a fan, but I am not even more not of a fan of Mike Zunino in the backup, and I got to stop drafting Mike Zunino in our fantasy leagues. I'm kind of sick and tired of having him be my catcher, and because I never draft a catcher early, and I expect this guy to hit 30 home runs and drive in 80 runs, and he never does it. He can hit a little bit, but man, his batting average is atrocious. And it seems like if he does get a hit, it is a home run, and that's it. And not a big fan of his in any aspect of the game, really, defensively or on the offensive side of the game anymore. I thought for a little while there he was going to do it, but I think with that staff and not having a catcher you can rely on, man. We talked a little bit about this with the Braves. Oof, I am not a fan, and I think that this is a weakness that I'm going to definitely scream about with this Rays team this year.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. I don't know how they missed. There were several good catchers available last year, and if this is going to be your year to win, why don't you go get Yasmani Grandal? Why don't you go get Jason Castro? I don't know what – I'm sure Mike Zunino is probably a great guy, so I'm not slamming his character or whatever, but, man, 165 last year. Folks, if you're trying to raise a baseball player and you want your kid to make millions of dollars, just make him a good defensive catcher, because a guy is on a major league roster of a possible World Series team, and he hit 165 last year. It's just amazing to me. And, again, I'm just not a big fan of the Rays lineup in general. Now, Kevin Cash is going to make it work. We know that. Somehow, some way, he's going to make it work. But I just can't see them scoring enough runs to keep up with the big dogs. But we'll see. But I'm like you. The catcher is a major weakness. What position battles do you think we should pay attention to?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it's that catcher position. That's one of them, and I'm not going to harp on that one a little bit because I don't know if Zunino is going to be the guy at the end. I really don't. I'm not too sure what he's going to do as far as if they're going to stick with him or go with the other guy. But one of the things I'm a little interested in is, with all the signings of the outfielders that they got Renfroe, Martinez, Yoshitomo, Kevin Kiermaier, and Austin Meadows. All those guys are battling for 4 spots. So there's 5 guys battling for 4 spots there with the DH. One of those guys will DH, but one of those guys is going to be on the bench. And that's pretty tough. Out of those guys we just mentioned, they all bring a lot to the table. And I think Austin Meadows is an absolute stud. To me, this is my favorite guy on this team as far as just a gamer. What an unbelievable season last year. So he's kind of your lock, I think, out of all these guys. Kiermaier doesn't hit very well, but his defense in center field is unbelievable. So, maybe you pinch hit for him with one of these guys late. If you need the runs, if you need the defense, you got to keep him in there. Hunter Renfroe could be a guy that misses out on a spot because of his average, like you were saying. You got to get Martinez in, and you got to get the guy from Japan in. So you got to come up with different ways. You're not going to stick one of these guys with G-Man at first. So, they've got to find a spot to stick. And I think that's the biggest position battle they got going there. But it's a good problem to have, no doubt.
Yeah, I think it's hard to nail down a position battle other than catcher for me. You're right. Outfield would be one to think about too. But the way Kevin Cash plays everyone, almost every position, there's a potential platoon partner in there. And so it's like, well, you could talk about first base, but both those guys are going to play. You could talk about second base, but you got Joey Wendell, and the other guy's name is skipping me.
Brandon Lau.
Yeah, Brandon Lau. You got third base. The guy from Japan can play some third as well. You got the outfield, but I think all those guys, Kevin Cash is going to do a good job of putting guys in where they can succeed. And so I think they really need to find them a catcher, and they still got some questions in their bullpen too. The top end of that bullpen is obviously strong. He does the closer by committee, does a great job with that. But I didn't really think it was that deep. Now you got some guys, that may be there. I can see Brendan McKay being a stopper in that bullpen at some point. He definitely averaged better than a strikeout per inning. You could see him just coming in and airing it out. So maybe that's the answer there. But most of the guys towards the end of that bullpen, your 5th, 6th, 7th guy are just guys, on depth charts. There are guys at ERA over 4. And so, like I said, maybe they push all the chips in the middle and use a Brendan McKay there somewhere. So they got a couple interesting position battles to watch. But like I said, it's kind of hard to nail down a lot of it just because of all the platoons and that kind of thing. All right. So we've talked about, their strengths, weaknesses. Where do you project them to finish, DJ? What do you think is going to be the end story for them?
So, man, I went back and forth on this all day long, and I've already told you that I think the Yankees are a team to beat in the American League, so they're not going to win the division. I do believe this is a playoff team, but I don't think it's going to win the World Series. I really don't. I've seen a lot, like you have, of analysts and experts picking these guys to win this year, and I just don't see it. I got to give them a lot of credit. They've done an amazing job. They have a lot of depth and a lot of talent, but I just don't stack them up with these other teams like you were saying. And And I just don't think they're going to get over that hump. I think they're kind of stuck, which I would love to be stuck at a 90, 96 win season, no doubt, but I think they're kind of stuck there and being a playoff team and not really getting over the hump. Kind of an Atlanta Braves type thing where you're just in there all the time and you're not going to really progress and proceed to the next level here. So the stats, nothing really stands out when you look at their stats offensively. One of the things that does stand out to me, though, is of all the starters last year, besides Meadows, all these guys had about 50, 60 RBI. Okay, what kind of stood out and jumped out to me, and you just mentioned this too with Kevin Cash using a lot of guys. And so he had 6 guys off the bench with 20 ribbies last year. 6 guys with 20 ribbies off the bench is unheard of. You don't see that very much. So he's spreading the love like you're talking about, and he's putting guys in different positions, and he's doing these things that he does with the pitching, and it's working. He's no doubt a genius, and he's no doubt knows what he's doing. But I just don't see, for a best case scenario, them getting over anything they've already done, and I think they're kind of stuck doing what they do right now.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think the Rays have potential to step back a little bit, and I'm sure some pundits would love to argue that with me. I just can't see them stepping forward with what they lost and what they've added, unless a guy like Franco comes up and just tears it up. Now that could change things. So I'm definitely projecting them for a second place finish behind the Yankees. I think they're going to be borderline with the playoffs again. We'll see what happens there. Like I said, they've made liars out of it the last 2 years. I can just be honest and tell you this. I've never thought, oh, crap, we got to play the Rays today. And they may have owned the Yankees last year. I don't know, but they're not scary at all. They don't have a whole lot of big stars, that you can look at and be like, oh, gosh, when he gets up to hit, it makes me nervous or whatever. And I feel the same way about them this year. I'm just not scared of them. I guess this is the best way that I could say it. If I'm the Yankees, I'm still not really looking over my shoulder, even though they won 96 games last year. It sounds crazy, but I'm kind of the same place with you. So what's the best case scenario?
So the worst case scenario, I feel, is like you just said. They take a little bit of a step back. They take that step back. They don't make the playoffs. This team does not spend a ton of money, if I'm not mistaken. They're not going to go out and sign huge free agents to, massive deals or anything. They just haven't been that team that does that typically. So worst case scenario for this team is they take a step back and fall maybe below the Red Sox, which, I'm not a fan of them either, but it's possible of the teams that are in that division that would be the team. You got an up-and-coming team like the Blue Jays too, who we'll get to talk about here one of these days. And, man, with all that young talent they got, holy smokes. So the Orioles aren't going to step over them. But, if the Red Sox, can get over them maybe, and the Blue Jays could be a team that if those prospects are clicking, they're going to be tough. And they're going to be, they've added some pitching too to that team. So they're going to be up and coming, no doubt. So if this happens to be their year, I still think they're a year or two out. They could pass him as well. So that wouldn't bode well for the Rays. They would take a little step back. There's not a very good fan base there, let's be honest. So the team maybe loses more fans, ends up going to a different city, which is a possibility because they're talking about them going somewhere, maybe back to Montreal and getting them a team. You've heard those rumors. So that would be the worst case scenario for me, is if this team starts to fall back and the fans lose interest, they completely lose the team altogether.
Well, I think there's potential there for that, man. I really do. And you know what would happen if they started to fall back? Traditionally, there's been a sell-off behind it. You know what I mean? And so then we're back starting all over again. Of course, they've got a great farm system, but I'm like you, man. Watch out for the Blue Jays. They're definitely making some moves and got some prospects coming up that can rival anything that the Rays can put on the field. So, yeah, I'm like you. Worst case scenario, a lot of these guys fall flat on their face. I mean, what happens if Charlie Morton gets injured, for instance?
Yeah.
You know, man, that's a big loss. He's kind of the heart and soul of that rotation. And so, you know, you get to the end of the year and they want to dump salaries, and then, like I said, all of a sudden you're starting this whole thing over again. So I think the World Series, you know, is in a lot of people's mind for the Rays. Do I think it's possible? I do. I think it's possible. I just don't think it's very likely. And so, you know, their best case scenario obviously is to overtake the Yankees, win the division, and go to the World Series. But I just don't see it personally. All right, DJ, let's talk ballparks a little bit. Have you ever been to the Trop?
Oof, no. I never have. I think this would be an easy one to do. I mean, a lot of us, like you just said, I think you guys are going to Florida for vacation this year. This is obviously a crazy year. We don't know if fans are going to be able to be in attendance or anything. But if you were to take a trip to Florida and go to the beach, technically speaking, you'd probably go through Tampa to go where you're wanting to go. And you could hit the Rays and then go down and catch the Marlins on a vacation pretty easy, which is what I'll definitely do when I go to see those two is hit them both the same week, no doubt. But to be honest with you, man, the field looks awful. It just does. I don't see much character to it. In 2023, Ybarro Stadium, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, YBOR Stadium comes, and that looks awful too. Whoever designed that, man, I don't know if you've seen the pictures or anything of what's coming, but man, I think me and you could have definitely, no doubt, created a better field. I'll just be honest with you. I'm not impressed at all. So the Trop's going to be gone after 2022. So if you're going to see it, it's got to be fast, and then the new one comes. And that's another interesting thing, too, you know, is that they got this new ballpark going. They better keep the team. So they got to figure out ways to do that, to stay competitive, to draw in the fan base, which is really weird to me that Tampa Bay cannot provide a very good fan base for baseball. It's kind of weird to me, but it is what it is, and they're struggling for fans, no doubt. And you know, I have not been there. I do not like it's low on my list of ballparks to see. I think I would just go just to check it off the list, to be honest with you, and obviously to watch baseball and everything. But I'm not sitting here going, man, I can't wait to get to the Trop, or I can't wait to get to the new stadium. That's just never crossed my mind, and I've never really been a fan of either stadium, the one that currently is, the one in the future. I mean, hopefully I'll get to the Trop before it closes, but I might not, and then I'll have to go to the new one, and I'm not really looking too much forward to it. So, how about you?
Yeah. Well, I did not know that they had a new stadium coming, to be honest with you. But believe it or not, I have been to the Trop.
Nice.
Yeah, I actually went one year. We were on vacation back probably in early 2000s and went and saw the Yankees play there. And it was crazy. It was a pro Yankees crowd. The Yankees won the game. It was when the Rays were really bad. And, yeah, the Trop is terrible. The greatest thing about it is it has air conditioning. It's small. Yeah, there's just really not much to like about it at all. I mean, what a bad idea. And, you know, it's sad. The Rays and the Marlins kind of got a little bit of the same problem. You know, they don't – Marcus hit the nail on the head the last episode. They don't have an identity. You know, like I told you before we started this episode, it was hard for me to remember. We always talk about favorite players from different teams. It's hard to remember a lot of players from the Rays because either they weren't there very long or maybe they were a good player on a terrible team. And so, man, for any fan, that's really hard to get behind. If you know in 2 or 3 years that your best players are going to be traded somewhere else, that's hard to get behind. So I feel really sorry for Rays fans. I would love to see the Rays get moved. I'm not sure that Montreal is the right place to go. But obviously baseball in Florida, surprisingly, is a tough thing. You know, I wish somebody with a bunch of money would go down there and keep players and spend, and maybe that would draw those fans in. But both the Marlins and the Rays have had great teams and just can't keep fans. So I'll have to get online today and check out that new stadium. That's interesting.
Whew, it's rough, man. It's rough. Text me when you check that out and tell me what you think, because not a fan.
All right, DJ. So let's talk some Rays trivia.
Ooh, yeah.
Now, I love stuff like this. So who is the all-times saves leader for the Rays?
Oh man, you guys are killing me, man. You guys are going all-time save leaders on me all night tonight. Wow.
You're gonna be mad you didn't get this because I was mad. I didn't know it either.
Okay, give me like 30 seconds to kind of mull this one over a little bit because I'm trying to think here. The Rays all-time leader in saves.
He was probably their only All-Star for like 3 or 4 years.
Okay, I think I've got it actually. I think I've got it. Is it Roberto Hernandez?
It is.
Yes.
Very
Yes.
good.
That was clutch.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna throw another one at you. You ought to get this. All-time wins leader for the Rays.
Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna go, and I think he's like probably one of the worst pitchers toward the end of his career. He started out really good with the Rays, and then he just fell. I think he went to the Padres and then to the White Sox, and was just bad. James Shields.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly right. You know, James Shields for a minute, he was like leading the league in complete games there at one point. I mean, he's again spent some good years on bad teams. And so, you know, a lot of people wouldn't remember that at one point James Shields was a stud, man. He was a stud. But yeah, he's their all-time wins leader for sure.
Well, matter of fact, that you brought that up, I think my question goes right along on those lines here. So I'm going to give you a minute, and I'm going to tell you to give me the top 10 wins leaders in Rays history. And you already got a jump start there.
I'll never get this, ever.
Go for it, man. See what you got. Go.
Well, obviously, there's James Shields. I'm trying to think of who ever pitched for the Rays. Is there any big names in here, or is this all there is?
Yeah.
Wow. Terrible, man. You're just going to have to tell me. It's too late. I can't draw up Rays pitchers this late at night. So who are we?
All right. So the one guy we've already talked about tonight that we can't stand, what's his name?
That we can't stand?
Yeah, we were talking about him. Lefty, can't stand him.
Yeah, David Price.
David Price, yep.
Yeah.
Who was another lefty for them that dominated for about 5 years and kind of fell off?
You know, I bet Chris Archer's in that conversation.
Chris Archer is there. You got that one too.
Yeah, he's not a lefty, obviously, but
no, that one popped in there. That's good.
David Price, Chris Archer.
He was like their ace for about 4 or 5 years. This lefty I'm thinking of here.
Who'd they trade him to? Because I know they've traded him somewhere along the line.
Ooh, I want to sue, man. That's a tough one. I don't know where he went off and rotted to, but he didn't pitch very good after he left.
Who is it?
Scott Kazmir.
Ah, yeah, he was a Mets.
Remember him?
For a minute. Yeah.
Other guys on this list are a little tougher. Well, the one guy is Blake Snell. He's actually on there. The guy in their rotation now. The other guys are pretty tough. I'll give you that. It's Alex Cobb, Jeremy Hellickson, Jeff Neiman, Jake Odorizzi, and Matt Moore.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was thinking you get 4, maybe 4 of them. You got about 3. I'll give you 3.
That was terrible, man. I was locked up there for a minute. I should have got definitely Alex Cobb and Hellickson. Those guys were, good for a minute. And but like I said, that the Rays for me is just a team I've never paid any attention to at all. But I should have known. So who? On that note, who's your all-time favorite Ray?
This one's actually pretty easy for me. I am going with Evan Longoria. This guy, I mean, when you think of the Rays, he's got to be the first name that comes to your mind all time.
Yeah.
What a class act. This guy is just a real deal. Shuts his mouth, plays the game. I love Evan Longoria. 300 homers, 1,000 ribbies, 1,700 hits. The face of the franchise for all those years. Amazing on defense. All-star 3 times, which is surprising to me that Evan Longoria has only been an all-star 3 times, which, I don't know, man. That's kind of rough. 56 WAR player. Now let's talk about this for a second, Swor. Do you buy the WAR stat?
I think it's a factor, but I can't buy into it 100%. I'm sorry. For instance, the guy you love to hate, Brett Gardner. Brett Gardner, man, produces in WAR because he's a great base runner and he's great on defense. And those are obviously 2 important parts of the game, but I'm not sure I can use that for a Hall of Fame stat. I'm sorry. Like I said, I think it's a factor. It's something I want to hear about. But like in Longoria's case, I'm thinking the baseline usually is around 60 to get in that conversation. And as much as I like Longoria, and he was a feared hitter for a lot of years, great player, but not a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. But you watch. He'll get some conversation because of that, especially if he ends up a couple more good years. He'll definitely be in the conversation. But what do you think about WAR, DJ? I don't think we've ever actually talked about it.
We haven't, and I was wondering your thoughts on that. I couldn't agree more. I'm not a fan. I was looking the other day at your Yankee guy, the Herman guy that got suspended for domestic abuse. What did he go? 18-4 last year, I believe, and his WAR last year was 2. And I'm like, this guy is 2 wins above replacement of the average pitcher with an 18-4 record. I can't wrap my head around that. I really can't. I have a hard time with that. I just don't understand how a guy who goes 18-4, and I know he's not, he wasn't the greatest pitcher in the world, but my goodness, he's 18-4 and he's got a 2 WAR. So you're telling me he's 2 wins above the average pitcher? Well, that would be 16 if he's 2 above that. I don't know, man. 16 is not the average pitcher, so I'm confused by it. There's a lot that goes into it. I don't buy it. I look at WAR stats for a lot of these guys, and I'm like, man, that's pretty bad for a guy that you think would be way higher or way lower. I don't get it. I can't wrap my head around it. I can't figure out the formula. I'm not going to lie to you. It's one of those stats that I just can't. I don't use it at all for determining anything about a player. I don't understand it. I wish one of those sabermetric junkies would explain it to me in full detail so I could understand it a little bit better, but I don't get it, man. So no, I don't look at it at all.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a neat stat to look at. It takes into account a lot of, for instance, your boy Tim Raines, other than like runs, he doesn't have Hall of Fame statistics. He doesn't. He didn't have 3,000 hits. He wasn't really close to it. He didn't have 400 homers. Wasn't even close to it. Now he did steal a lot of bases and runs, but Tim Raines was a darling of WAR. He was a good defensive player. He was a great base runner. And so, I think in the old days, no way Tim Raines gets in. But when people start looking at sabermetrics and all that he did on the field, I think it definitely provided him a way, whether you like it or not. It provided him a way in, and it does add value to guys like Brett Gardner, who've been around forever and ever and ever. And you look at him, and he's hitting 250 with 20 homers, but ends up with 5 WAR that year. And, you realize he's an elite defensive player. And so it takes into account stats like that. And I do appreciate it for that. But I'm like you, if I can't put my finger on it or explain it to somebody, I'm not investing much in it. So anyway.
What about you? Who's your favorite Ray of all time?
So I had to, no joke, I had to Google this like right before we started the episode to see who was on their team. And Evan Longoria came to mind. And 2 other guys, Wade Boggs. So Wade Boggs, towards the end of his career, went back to Tampa, when the team got started there. And I've always appreciated Wade Boggs, just a professional hitter, man. I watched him play the other day. Even when he was like 30, he looked like a 60-year-old man up there hitting and just kind of stiff. But he always managed to make contact. He got a lot of big hits. And then another guy that I've always liked, I like me some Jose Canseco, man. It made his at-bats made the Rays interesting there for a little bit of time. So I'll go with those 2 guys, and obviously Evan Longoria. He was a fun player to watch.
Fantastic. Well, David, my computer is about trashed here, so I think we got to everything we needed to get to as far as the 2020 Rays go. Um, as far as teammates go that were Rays fans, I couldn't come up with anybody. Maybe Donnie Cruz, but we got to get a hold of him and figure out what kind of fan he was.
He's in assisted living down there somewhere from what
So with that, man, I got to get going here because I think we're going to die, and I want to get this over before we do. So this was a good episode, man. These Rays could be great, could be not. We're not really sure about this team. So very interesting. And David, it's been great, man. We'll see what we can do as far as our next episode. And thanks to all of our fans who are out there watching. We appreciate you. Have a good night, everybody.